Hello and happy GIS Day. My name is Lisa Berry and I am a senior product engineer at Esri, the largest GIS company in the world. I'm a data scientist and cartographer, which essentially means I make maps for a living. Just something quick about myself. I like maps, cats, racing cars, running, hiking, and live music. I'm passionate about what I do as a senior product engineer, and I've been at Esri almost 8 years now. I work with demographic content and I do Python scripting as well as workflow automation with GIS datasets. For my undergraduate, I studied at UC Santa Barbara in beautiful California. I was the geography club president and I also interned for one of the fathers of GIS, Michael Goodchild. I had some incredible experiences and opportunities during my undergraduate, which then led to my master's program at University of Redlands, where I live now. This was a one-year intensive program where I actually worked with Caltrans, which is the transportation company in California that helps manage our roads. And I got to work with GIS data, helping them plan where to put their roads. Nowadays, I make maps about the population. I've had the opportunity to present in front of 30,000 people with Esri, and I love presenting. It's something that I enjoy doing, and I encourage you all to follow what you enjoy doing when you find your careers. On a day-to-day basis, like I said, I make maps, and I, again, love what I do. These are just a few examples of some of the maps that I've made that help show topics such as wildfires, population patterns, income, race, air quality, and many other topics. And so that kind of leads me into what is GIS? What is this topic that we're so excited about this week? And you'll hear me maybe say this a few times, but we like to think of this as the science of where. Now, GIS at its core means geographic information systems. And if we break each one of those words down, it essentially means mapping, data, and software. That's kind of what those words break down into. So essentially, GIS is a software that helps us map data about the world. But data can be thought of as so boring, right? But it's not. Data is exciting and it helps us learn more about the world around us, helps us answer questions, and really change the world around us, whether that be through policy or climate change. The possibilities really are endless. And again, I'm lucky enough to map a lot of different topics, and I'm going to dive into kind of just what kind of topics can you map with GIS? So let's go over a scenario where you might use GIS for an everyday situation. So imagine you live in Conroe and you want to visit your cousin over the weekend who lives in Houston. Now you can use GIS to help you plan and learn more as you're planning this trip. So here we have a map that you're probably all familiar with. This is traffic. But did you know this map is simply data on a map? Each one of these data points are coming from vehicles on the road, live, and these are being aggregated and converted into these easy to understand red, orange, yellow, and green patterns that our minds understand as traffic. Now, you may not have even realized it, but you already know how to read maps pretty well, probably. Now, imagine as you're driving down the freeway, you see a train passing by alongside you. And you might wonder, where's that train going? Or what's inside of it? Is my Amazon package inside that train? Or really, who needs the things inside that train? And now, as you're driving down the freeway, you're getting excited and you call your cousin. And they say, hey, let's go to a park sometime this weekend. Well, there's a lot of different parks to choose from. What kind of things do we want to do at the park? Do we want a big park? What kind of things are offered at each park? And as you're talking to your cousin, they say, "Oh, can you pick up some chips? I'm out of snacks in the house." You may need to know how easy it is to access a grocery store along the freeway as you're driving there. And it's no accident that it's really easy to access a grocery store everywhere, as this blue and white map shows us, because grocery stores most likely use GIS to specifically plan where each one of those grocery stores is placed so that you can find one almost anywhere you go. And now, as you're planning your festivities with your cousin, your mom or dad calls and they say, "What happens if an emergency happens? Do you have a plan?" And you say, "Well, of course, it's really easy to determine where the closest hospitals are along my way or near my cousin's house." As the Boy Scouts say, be prepared. And now, as you're getting closer to your cousin's house, you're starting to notice the neighborhood. And you might wonder, is my car okay to park here? I just got this car for my birthday. And a map like this one tells us maybe our cousin's house is in an area of higher crime. I may want to park my car in the garage. Now, this is a made-up scenario that brought up a lot of cases where data and maps would actually help us plan and better understand things. And while these may seem simple, this is a prime example of how GIS brings data to life through the visual representation of a map. And now, like I said, we can actually all already use maps and understand them better than we probably even realize. And at its core, GIS helps us understand the science of where. And now here, I love this quote right here. If Google is the what, when you search for something, and Facebook is the who to understand the people around us, then Esri is the where. And now I love that quote because it really gets down to the core of the fact that it can be applied to anything when you're asking the question, where is something? Where's the best place to put something? And now this diagram I know isn't super thrilling, but just to tie this back to this boring concept of data, is that in reality, data helps us learn more so that we then have information, knowledge, and wisdom. So really at its core, GIS data gives us wisdom and insight about the world around us. And I just love that analogy, and I always think of this pyramid when I talk about GIS. And now you might be wondering, who uses GIS? Now you'd actually be surprised at how many businesses, colleges, cities, governments, etc. use GIS on a daily basis. Now you'll see these examples. These are just a few industries that use GIS all the time. For example, I mentioned that example about the grocery stores. Businesses use GIS all the time in order to determine where the best location is to put something. Or with our most recent situation with the pandemic, health GIS is very commonly used to determine where are the sick population, who are underserved, where are the people who need health care and resources that maybe don't have health or resources. If you're interested in conservation or science or natural resources, GIS is commonly used in the scientific community in order to better assess the world and figure out things like, are protected species continuing to expand their populations? Or how much rain did my city get recently? And now these are just like I said, just a few examples, but really you can expand your mind to almost any situation when looking at, when considering where GIS can be used. Now I know I already gave you a made up scenario, but let's go ahead and explore some real life situations where GIS is used all the time. One example is with emergency response. So what I like to do is connect each map with a question. So the most basic question in this example is, where do hurricanes happen? Where have they happened? Now this map is showing us all the hurricanes that have occurred in the last year. And so we can see immediately where these go and where they've been in the past. You'll notice a really distinct pattern of the hurricanes starting along the equator and then working their way north in some way, shape, or form. And this may hit kind of close to home for many of you because I know that Houston and Texas in general has experienced many hurricanes over the years. And so when we again start to ask questions, you may ask, how many people do I know who have been impacted by a recent hurricane or tropical depression storm? Now, this path right here, this was a tropical storm that happened just in September near you guys. And the areas in red, orange, and yellow show where there were high winds directly correlated to that hurricane. So you can immediately see who was impacted the most and where areas were impacted with the wind. So you may relate to this, again, too close to home. But you can continue to ask questions like, is there anyone that I know who was impacted by flooding due to this storm? So in this layer that was just brought into the map, this shows where all of the flood risk areas are. Now this is a layer from a government agency called FEMA, and this is a really valuable information when planning for emergency response because they can determine where populations live within these really at-risk areas. And again, exploring where hurricanes have happened in the past and knowing where these flood zones are can help us plan for the future so that we can protect people's houses or help them escape in general during these situations. Now, let's move on to exploring other topics that are related to GIS and spatial thinking, where we can ask more questions of the world around us. For example, this layer that was just brought into the map shows us air quality throughout the state. Well, actually throughout the country, but focused on Texas in this example. Areas in brown have more poor air quality. So essentially there's more particles in the air that can cause health issues. And what this map helps us actually ask more questions of is, why are certain areas more likely to have poor air quality than other areas? Right away we can see these areas up here have much worse air quality. And then there's this pocket over here that's going on. Well, what's happening? Maybe there's mining, maybe there's oil drilling. Houston in general seems to have better air quality than these areas in Dallas. Now, why might that be? Maybe it's wind patterns, wind that's coming from the ocean, pushing all that gross air somewhere else. Or maybe there's mountains trapping the air in the pocket like this one. And so I'll say this over and over again as well, is that what we can do the best when using GIS is to ask questions, because a map isn't necessarily going to give us all the answers, but it can help us make more maps to help us get closer to answering the questions that we have about the world. Now, imagine you're interested in conservation. Maybe you're interested in helping with climate change or protecting certain wildlife species. Did you know that all these areas in green are designed to help protect a species or a marine wildlife? Now, if we click on one of these, we can learn more about that wildlife refugee, what it is. In this case, it's a marine protected area, as well as when it was created. This one, for example, was created in the 80s. So this one's been around for quite a while and is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And this is just one example of how GIS can help us with conservation efforts. We can maybe track where the different wildlife populations exist, where they should exist, and if their populations are increasing or decreasing. Now, I'll go back to the topic that's close to my heart, which is the population. So I know I brought up earlier the question of, do you know anyone who lived in that hurricane swath? Well, there's a lot of population data out there that can help us learn what kind of populations are impacted. So an at-risk population that you might be interested in is people who don't have health insurance. Because at its core, if you don't have health insurance and an emergency happens to you, you're at a much higher risk for something to go wrong during those situations. So this map tells us where the population lives who is more likely to not have health insurance. Now, a map like this can be really useful for government agencies so that maybe they can change their policies in these different areas in red, and they can immediately learn more about the population in those areas and how at risk they are. So in this scenario, we can see how many people of different age groups might be at risk. So another topic that is close to my heart is this topic of equity. So you've probably seen this on the news in many different places, and maps can really help us explore topics like this so that we can learn more about the population and how they're being served by organizations, like I said, government. So again, going back to that concept of asking a question. Where do they live, first of all? Where do people of different race and ethnicities live, and how many are there? So this map immediately is telling us some really interesting information about the population in the Houston area. Areas in green have predominantly Hispanic or Latino population. Areas in yellow, predominantly Black or African American. Purple is Asian population predominantly, and these beigeish brown colors are predominantly non-Hispanic white. Now, on its own, this is interesting because we can learn more about how many people live in this area by different race and ethnicity groups. But where GIS really helps us start answering those questions is, well, what about that topic of healthcare? Where are all those underserved populations? And is there a correlation to the race or ethnicity of those underserved populations? GIS can help us explore questions like this so that, again, we can help change the world around us and get resources to those who need them. Now, I'll just end this by saying GIS can be applied to almost any topic. And I hope by now you've realized that GIS is this power of asking questions and mapping the world around us. But you might wonder, how do you learn GIS? Again, ask questions. Always ask questions. In everything you do, ask more questions. And start trying to apply spatial thinking to your everyday scenarios or even your assignments at school. And I would recommend ask your teacher if your school has resources and options for learning ArcGIS. Because for all the teachers in the room, you may not realize that GIS or ArcGIS is free for instructional use. So you and all your students can get access to GIS and resources and data all at your fingertips for free. And if that's daunting, you may want to know that there are already many free online mapping instructional resources that are available that cover a wide range of topics. And so if we explore some of these, you can see that you're not alone in this and you don't have to start from square one. You can access many different resources, quick, free 15-minute instructional videos, 1-hour lessons that really dive deep. There's so many different resources at your fingertips that you can start to explore the power of mapping for different topics that are probably already in your curriculum. And so imagine being able to apply GIS to all the topics you're already learning, like American literature or earth science, or any of these other topics that are listed here. And so what I really like to hit home is that GIS is more than just memorizing states and maps and capitals. It really is asking questions and applying those to the world around you. And now there's also one more resource if you've gone over all the lessons that are on the instructional resources. There's also a website called Learn ArcGIS, which gives real-world examples and scenarios where you can go through a full analytical process using GIS to explore the world around you. And now I hope that I've instilled some excitement about maps and GIS, and I know that you guys are going to have an awesome GIS week. You have so many different things that you have to look forward to, different lessons and speakers. And I just appreciate you guys so much for having me, and I hope that you have happy mapping and have fun learning GIS. Thank you.